Hello, everybody. My name is Bruce Olav Solheim, and I'm an old friend of David's. And I would like to say a few words, if I might. And I decided, I had thought about doing a more produced video. And then I thought, what would be more perfect for this, talking about David and his celebration of life than to film this where I do my writing. I, I know David would like that, and I feel comfortable doing it this way as well. You can see I have here an original copy, first edition of Renf Diary, David's incredible book about his experience, his novel about his experience in the Vietnam War. And if it wasn't for David, I wouldn't be able to teach the Vietnam War course. I learned so much from him, and also about writing. He's my writing mentor, and of course, a dear friend. So anyway, I wrote something that I wanted to share with you all, and I'll just read that to you now, as we all think about how David touched our lives. I hope you enjoy the comic book two-pager illustrated by Gary and Laura Dumm about my friendship with David. Gary was a Clevelander, and he was the primary artist for Harvey P. Carr and his 1970s American Splendor comic book, which was made into a award-winning film starring Paul Giamatti in 2003. David was a great admirer of Harvey and American Splendor, and they had some similarities, as it turns out. Harvey was known as the Mark Twain of comics and the poet laureate of Cleveland. David shared Harvey's dark humor and bleak romanticism. Both wrote about the heroics of the working class everyman who was simply making it through another day with their soul and hopefully their dignity intact. David was a prolific writer. According to the Vietnam Veterans of America artist editor Mark Leipson, who said, "I cannot overestimate the importance of his books, educational work, and his prolific work for us on the Vietnam War literature and film. Everyone who cares about Vietnam War literature and film is forever in his debt," and I couldn't agree more with Mark. I loved reading David's poems, short stories, reviews, and novels. I would not be a successful writer today without the mentorship of my dear friend, David Willson. I consider David to be the poet laureate of Maple Valley and the Mark Twain of Vietnam War literature. The first time I met David in the Holman Library, in the old Holman Library at Green River Community College, or GRCC as we like to call it, I greeted him. I said, "David Willson, I presume," trying to be amusing. "I've heard a lot about you. How are you?" Unfazed, he nodded in acknowledgement. "Couldn't be better. It wouldn't be fair to all the little people," he said in a booming voice in an otherwise quiet library. I laughed, sensing the bombastic irony in his response, as a smile broke out across his face, a smile that all of us know very well. Our friendship, which began in 1993, endures to this day in my meditative moments here at this desk and walking, for my walking meditation, where I often ask for David's advice about creative projects. David founded the Vietnam War Writers Symposium at GRCC. He was a highly skilled master of ceremonies. I was lucky enough to help him put together the last two symposia before I moved to Southern California in 1998. He was a natural entertainer, as most of you know. In his back-to-school video he did for GRCC in 1996, he interviewed the teachers returning like he was working the red carpet at the Oscars. That is, if a very talented, erudite person was working the red carpet. His dark, dry sense of humor shined brightly as I watched in amazement. He could have been a stand-up comedian, and I told him that many times. He commanded the stage. Even when I visited him in the Holman Library at his reference desk, he was on. In that back-to-school video, one of the teachers asked about his choice of necktie that featured the Edvard Munch Scream painting, the Norwegian painter. David responded, "Wearing the necktie is part of my anger management therapy. It externalizes my internal torment, keeping me from lashing out violently at those around me." The other teacher was literally speechless. David is a resolute and loyal friend. He advises me through good and bad times, still. He befriended a Vietnam War veteran colleague at GRCC before I showed up on campus. His name was Joe Hooper, a Medal of Honor winner. David understood what heroism was. Joe Hooper, one of the most decorated soldiers in American history, worked at the college but was fired because he struggled with the demons of war. Joe died tragically at the age of 40. I asked David to share something about Joe that I could pass on to my Vietnam War history students. And this is what he wrote. Joe Hooper was a casualty of war, and you can expect more of the same after Afghanistan and Iraq. Look at the history. This is a country made by war on the backs of vets who have never, ever been treated as promised. Hooper's story is a lesson on that failure. If we can't save our heroes, who can we save? David was a hero to me. Now, he did not fight toe-to-toe with Charlie and the rice paddies of South Vietnam, although everyone faced danger in that 360-degree war. David's brave battles were mainly of conscience and his illness. But he was exposed to the same deadly chemicals and wrestled with many of the same demons of war as Joe Hooper. Those experiences spilled onto the pages of his books and poems. Here is one of my favorites. The frogs are gone. Don't strain your weak eyes looking. The frogs are gone from their bushes. The yellow lizards were watching. The bugs are there creeping. The flies and ants and even the little birds. But those small green frogs are gone. Maybe Mrs. Cook ate them with rice. Maybe she sliced them up. Maybe something wild got them, although I don't know what would eat them except Mrs. Cook. Mrs. Cook ate the big frog that you found on the lawn when you were mowing. First, she tied a string to its left leg and dragged it around. It squealed. She knocked it on the head and skinned it, popped it in the pan, and fried it. But Mrs. Cook has been sick, hasn't been around lately. And besides, the frogs are damn small. Skinned, they provide less meat than all the flesh under your thumbnails, or the snails on the nearby wall. The frogs could be out there right now, but as far as I know, they're gone. The lizards chirp on, but the frogs are gone. That was part of a series of poems, the MACV poems, Military Assistance Command Vietnam poems that he wrote. This was a very prophetic one because, as some of you already know and suspect, the reason the frogs were gone, they're kind of like the canaries in the coal mine, dying from exposure to Agent Orange defoliant, which is probably what happened to Mrs. Cook as well. And of course, that's the exposure that David got. I know this is a celebration of life, but with life comes death. I found an appropriate quote to bring my remarks to a close. Amadou Hampâté Bâ, a writer, historian, and ethnologist from Mali, was an influential figure in 20th century African literature and cultural heritage. He was a champion of Africa's oral tradition and traditional knowledge, and is remembered for the saying, "Whenever an elder dies, it is as though a library were burning down." That was never more true than with our friend David's passing. That perfectly captures the loss that I know all of us feel. Thank you very much.